What's up, you guys? Welcome to the TechCity Podcast. It's so good to be here today. My name is Anu Jide-Ojo.
Take it out, yeah.
So in an earlier episode on the TechCity Podcast, we're talking about mental health for young professionals, tech bros, #women in tech, and just about every young professional out there. And the more we got into that conversation, the clearer it was that people sort of have heard that, advice on take care of your mental health, but then not many people know exactly what to do. It's like, okay, so what do I do, you guys? Should I resign my job?
Like you keep telling me that I need to have a work balance, I need to do this,
but I have money to make.
Do you understand?
So like, what is this advice you are giving, right? But then we're able to share a few tips on sort of how to figure out life as a young professional and as a tech bro, a tech sis. But even more, we of course hinted on therapy as something to also consider with regards to taking care of your mental health. And that has brought us to today. It's important for young people to get therapy, regardless of some of the, misconceptions that therapy has.
Or listening to your African parents telling you that you have spiritual
Mommy,
problems.
I'm not there.
I should pray to God instead of seeking help. You need help.
But there's that, and we'll definitely explore that. But who better to have this conversation with us on the importance of mental health and how to also approach it from a therapy perspective than Anu Jide-Ojo, our guest on the podcast today. Welcome. So as a way of introduction, Anu is a writer. She's a clinical psychologist as well as the founder of Us Therapy. Us Therapy is a resource platform that is dedicated to helping young professionals navigate their mental health at work and, of course, make mental health support accessible through psychotherapy, policy, research, as well as education. Through her work, Anu has merged intersectionality with client care to enable access for everyone. And she's also tried to create a safe space for healing, openness, and vulnerability in very healthy ways.
That is typical example of saying not all heroes wear cape.
You know what I mean?
Going out there to impact and help people.
I cannot.
Wonder Woman in locks.
I cannot.
It's so good to have you here, Anu.
Thank you
Welcome
for
to the TechCity
having me.
Podcast.
Thank you.
So I think a very good place to start this conversation would be, as someone who's been in the space for as long as you have been, what would you say is the most prevalent reason for mental stress? For, I guess, the average Nigerian professional, that ambitious person who's Nigerian.
I think like that search for meaning and your ability to contribute to your environment and what the requirement to contribute, in impactful ways. That is like a big stressor because that shows up as different things. If you're a dad working in tech, it's very different from if you are like in your early 20s starting your career and starting to make a name, because these days you're not just building your career, you have to make a brand about building your career.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Everyone is doing that.
Yes. So it's like, what are you doing to like contribute to your environment? What are you doing to like make meaning for yourself? And what is the cost of doing all of that? I think that is where the stressors come in from.
So that's like maybe like pressure coming from life or nature naturally.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense. Especially for 20-year-olds that are actually looking at other people making a crazy amount of money and thinking that, oh, what have I done with my life? Or how can I achieve this level of success? Relax, you're just 20.
Yeah.
You know how long somebody worked hard to, get
to where they are. I think
Understand?
that's so I guess the next question I would like to ask is, why then do we see therapy as sort of a taboo? When you hear therapy, for some people it's like, his spirit, something is wrong. It's almost something that we don't speak about openly. Why do you think that is?
I think the short answer is like the stigma attached to it, and the stigma comes from the message that was fed to us growing up. You would watch a typical Nigerian movie, and the consequence of doing something bad is to run mad. Or running mad means like probably schizophrenia, psychosis, bipolar disorder, any of the actual scientific name, but the attachment to it is like, if you are doing something bad, there's this moralistic angle to it. So when the consequence of, any bad action is seen as having a mental illness, when you go to therapy, what does that say about you? Does that mean that you fall under the category of being bad? And then for people that don't have that clear idea or the complete picture of what mental health looks like, and they're just getting information from their pastors, their parents and stuff, and they see a gap in their life, we are meaning makers. So we'll just fill in the blank space with whatever it is we have been fed from the people around us, right? And then there's also the idea of like, I need to be strong enough. There's the strong Black woman trope. There are, the patriarchal expectations of men as well, placed on men as well. So if you aren't strong and if you're not a man and you're in therapy, what does that mean about you?
Oof.
So those are some of the things, the reservations that people have about going to therapy. And then when you now merge religion with, unfortunately, some bad players in the mental health industry where they're bringing in religion into the field, it's like you've gone through the hurdle of, going through the stigma and saying, okay, I will brave it and go to therapy, and you're still hearing, let's pray in this session. That is a problem.
Wow.
So there are different, contributing factors to that.
Imagine you need a therapist and your pastor is telling you need deliverance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. So now let's bring it to the tech space. Or let's say a business owner or product owner. Why is therapy essential or important for an entrepreneur?
Because the stressors attached to being a business owner is incredibly high. Yeah. One, there's the cost of living. You're not just like dealing with your own cost of living like an employee would when you get their salary and go. You're also carrying the burden of providing for the people what you're working with. There are a number of people dependent on you, and there's that idea that if this business fails, it's not just me that is failing. There are like
families.
5, that attached to you. And then there's also the, if you have it depends on your relationship with failure and the shame that comes with it. So in a society where everything is on social media and everything is like, so X amount raised $200 million, X amount, this person's the youngest, Forbes 30 under 30 that does this and does that. It is resounding that this is a standard that you have to set for yourself. We have raised this Series A, something XYZ. So in the midst of that, right, that can be motivational, that can be like its own kind of motivation, but if it's not properly harnessed, it can be detrimental to you. And then there's also shame. We have a very terrible relationship with failure, and failure comes with shame sometimes, failure comes with anxiety, failure comes with depression. So if you allow yourself to say, if this doesn't work, it will suck and it would feel bad and I will disappoint a lot of people, but that is okay. It doesn't make me a failure. It means that this business has failed.
Right.
So for you to build that healthy relationship with failure is why you need therapy, so that like you be emotionally agile to navigate some really difficult and big decisions you would have to make and big emotions that you have to navigate running a business.
So as a founder of Us Therapy, walk us through your journey. What is your failure story?
I like that you asked for my failure story. I actually like that. Before I started working as a therapist full time, I worked in marketing for about 3 years.
Right.
Because getting into being a therapist in Nigeria, I just didn't think it was feasible. But I also didn't enjoy working in marketing. I'm an introvert, and I'm also someone that likes doing stuff that I find very meaningful. Right. And the industries that I worked in, it was just like, there are a lot of people facing roles. I had to talk with 50,000 people every day, so to speak, and it was draining. And I was just not like hitting that mark, like, oh, why am I doing this? Do I enjoy this? And the answer was just no across board. So it gave me a lot of anxiety, and I just like crashed and burned through it. That coupled with being on social media and seeing people talk about their experiences with therapy and how someone told them to pray, someone told them to do, and it's just like, I am trained for this, and I don't recall, hearing prayer being one of the interventions given. And it was just like, if I have a leg in this field, I will not do this. This is what I'll do differently. This is what I'll do differently. Thankfully, I got an NGO, the Initiative for Equal Rights, was hiring, and it was just like a merger of, their values and, their goals, and my values and my goals, and the job that I wanted to do. And thankfully, the pay was also decent. So I just, so I just put in my...
That's important.
Extremely important.
It was so key. So then I was thinking of going back to school for my doctorate, and I had my statement of purpose written. It was that statement of purpose I sent in as my application letter, because I didn't even know how to, because I looked for X amount accountant. And it's just like, see, let's just agree that I know this works. Like, so when I put it there, it told a decent story of who I was. And thankfully I got interviewed and then I got the job. And that's when I just like switched and I've not looked back since then.
Nice.
Yeah.
So after that, you're able to start your
private practices. Yes.
How's it been going for you?
It has its high points and its low points. Starting a business in Nigeria is not for the faint of heart.
Don't get us started.
Yeah. And let's be clear, I am the faint of heart. I like ease. I like, and there's also the fact that starting a therapy practice in Nigeria, there's a lot of mental health education that is happening, thankfully, but you have to build your community. You have to network with other therapists. You have to. I like I said, I'm an introvert, but I just had to throw that tag away and really say, come to our YouTube, yes. Come to our this, yes. Do Instagram Live, yes. And just like get over some of the stories I've told myself that, I'm not a public speaking person. I became a public speaking person because like I need to build this and it's something that is meaningful for me. And I don't know if I would succeed in any other field. I really enjoy my work as a mental health practitioner. So yeah, it has its high points and its low points, but it's something that is very meaningful to me. Like I don't have any big questions about, what am I doing in this life? All of that. It's just like I'm a therapist and I enjoy my work. And that's it for me.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So we have, speaking of companies and, working with companies, I'm sure you've gotten this experience about, how companies give their employees, workloads with, some crazy deadline.
Yeah.
Giving you like maybe one man will have to do like a roof fit for 10 men. You understand?
And deliver like next week.
Yeah.
Next week.
Oh,
that is too far.
COB.
And they'll be like, okay, you have to deliver without actually considering the employees' health. How do you think managers should handle such? Because, this work they're actually giving them has to be done by somebody.
Yeah.
You understand? It's necessary. So how do you think they should approach this?
I think like it now depends on the culture of the founder and the founder's like principles, because everything starts with like from the head and it trickles down, I believe. Yeah. If a person has the idea of hustle culture, I got this done, I pulled myself up by the bootstraps, the expectation would be you too must do the same because in my time I did this. But if you did all of that and you said that was incredibly stressful, that took a toll on me, that took a toll on my family, what can I do to make sure that another person doesn't do the same?
Yeah.
What are their empathy skills? How have they like reconciled their own experience, and how has that translated to the culture that they are creating? So I think like the founders and people in management need to actually look inward and be very honest about the impact of this thing, and not, shape that story into something great. Like, I went through depression.
Normalizing suffering.
I went through suffering. My children didn't see me for 3 days.
Romanticize.
And I'm okay with it. And that's a good thing. And it's like, that's not good. That is you creating a terrible relationship with your kids and, a terrible relationship with money. And, this is a very toxic, work culture. So reconcile your experience and like see the impact for what it is, unhealthy, and then learn skills to do the opposite. So if you need to work with people teams, if you need to work with a therapist, if you need to work with organizational and industrial psychologists that have studied how to do these things, then do that. But I think it starts from the top and it trickles down.
So speaking of it starting from the top and it trickling down, we've heard a number of stories about like startup founders and how when they get, it's either when they get new investment, when they raise, funds, or when they are about to, there's a lot of pressure on their staff, whether it's their engineers, their developers, to do X and do Y, and, just make sure that what they are creating meets the investors' expectations, right? And so recently there was even news about somebody who did that and how it was just super stressful. Now, for some people who perhaps want to go into tech, or maybe even any industry for that matter, there is that thing of, when you enter, you have to, rough your way through. It feels like you can't enter and just be chill. There's a lot of work. The workload is a lot. And sometimes people find that as motivation. Where it's like you enter there and there's no opportunity to just slack. You enter and you are on your feet immediately. And people sort of see that as, that's the leadership style. That's probably how it is. Is it possible? And do you think it's also advisable to sort of change leadership style from where people enter a company and they are expected to just really sort of have it tough, perhaps in the first days that they get there? Or do you think that maybe, I guess, a softer landing is a better way to lead a team?
To be honest, I think both. And if you're coming into the company and they acknowledge that the next 90 days are going to be tough, this is why. These are the expectations from us. We know that this is hard, but here is what we are going to do to compensate for that. Here are the benefits. Here are some of the mental health things. Here are some of the financial things. Here's our communication to your family. Here's what we can do to supplement this. But we know that it's going to be hard and we need you to bear with us. That is a more human and empathetic approach, as opposed to this is tech and it must be hard and it is okay. And it's just like, it excludes people from that experience. It excludes your humanity. It excludes your life outside of this company, right? So it's okay for things to be hard. The expectation is not that, work could be easy. Even working as a therapist, I'm talking work-life balance, all of these things. So I tell myself that I enjoy my job, but there are days that it is hard. When I have back-to-back sessions, after those days, I can't say a word because I'm drained. But I acknowledge that this is hard and this is the self-care practice that I have installed at the end, right? But if there is no care practice attached to those hard days, it just feels very inhumane. Right. So acknowledge your team's humanness and problem solve, do proactive coping strategies and, financial compensations, and even help them that this first 90 days is difficult, but here's what we think you can do to make it work. Here's the support that we think we can offer. What kind of support do you need? Let us know so that we can collaboratively move through these 90 days and then, make it to the end, and it will be great for all of us. I think even people will feel included, knowing that, these people actually are thinking about us, not just about, the bottom line or the investors or stuff like that.
Notes to all the business owners out there.
So do you think, because we just recently adopted the remote work from home system, do you think that has actually helped with mental health, improving mental health and productivity? And do you actually advise companies or agencies to adopt the same system?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, if you're living in Lagos or any other metropolitan city, the commute has reduced. The financial implication of that commute has also reduced. There's also time with your family, and if you like your family, that's a good thing. If you don't,
it has worsened your mental health.
It has worsened it, right?
Yeah.
No, because if you don't have boundaries around your work, where 5 p.m. is 5 p.m., you leave your office, you can just find yourself working till 10 p.m. because you didn't leave your desk, right? And if you don't have boundaries with communication with either your leader, your team lead, or your colleagues, they can text you at 12 midnight and say, oh, you're just working from home now, stuff like that. And if you don't have that, if you don't have structure around your day, your days will just blur into each other and you find yourself just as exhausted because your work life is the same thing as your home life. So what used to be a safe space where you leave the office and come home and feel like you are home, it now has all the markings of the stressors that you have at work. So it now depends on the structure and the rituals and routines that you've put in place to make sure that work is work and home is home, to really enjoy that remote life benefit. If not, it's not going to make any difference.
So you're advising not to really adopt it? It depends.
I think adopt it, but consciously adopt it. Be mindful about what that looks like. If you're doing a remote culture, actually have a work office stipend to help people set up. So that they're not working on their bed. When you're working on your bed, you won't be able to sleep. Right? Because you've associated your bed with work as opposed to rest. Right? So you just have structure around that. The same way you have structure around your office. Open 8 a.m., close 5 p.m., 8 to 5 is so terrible. How do people do that shit? It's so bad. But have structure around you. It's not just you're working from, we have a remote from home policy and that is cool. That's not. And then the employees too as well, especially women that are married with kids, structure have
it does not even structure does not even exist for those ones.
It has to have a design to it. It's not just working for.
So you just spoke about boundaries, and I have many friends that are actually like they have issues with setting boundaries with their employers, because if they don't want to come off as rude, or because I have friends that are like, their boss, how can I get home by 7 o'clock and my boss is texting me by night? I should send emails and all that. Like, coupled with the stress in Lagos, commuting from your office to the house.
Some can't even leave work, their boss has not left.
That is the thing. So how do you, what would you suggest, or how do you advise people like that to, set boundaries like that with their boss?
So I struggle with giving a blanket statement, because sometimes the impact of, this advice can mean loss of your job. So you have to like really look at where you are, the type of boss you have. Is it, the dictatorial one that, if you say X to me, you're out, and then create a plan after that. Like, if this person keeps doing this, it means that I have X amount of time in this company to get this job, and then after that go. So like, have a game plan around the boundaries that you want to set. And once you do that, practice setting boundaries in low stakes environments. So it can be with your colleague that just say, can you quickly send this at 9:05? It's like, sorry, it's 5 o'clock. And then emotionally regulate yourself, because guilt may show up.
Yeah.
All of these stories will show up. Like, I can just do this for 5 minutes. Like, if you do it for 5 minutes, it means that you can do this for 5 hours after your closing time. So, have a game plan. Start with like a low stake environment. If you can do this with your colleague, chances are you may be able to do it with your team leader, because you've built that resilience to it. You've built your assertiveness skills. You've learned that no is no, yes is yes. You've learned to check in with yourself, like, am I comfortable with this? You can even like circle back and say, hi, I know I committed to this earlier, but I looked at my schedule and I see that, I'm truly booked. Can you please, shift that somewhere else? Like, practice. And then while you're doing that practice, don't think that it's going to be easy. Like, regulate, learn to self-soothe after that guilt flares up. Learn to self-soothe and validate your needs and validate your feelings. So it's internal work and external work, like that, until you.
A couple of days ago or so, I saw a tweet that I could totally relate with, and it was, for lack of a better word, the need for some people to be constantly available. The need to be accessible all the time, and how someone like me, I don't think I can ever turn off my data. Maybe when I want to sleep, I guess, but like when it's in the day, sometimes even into the night, my data is always on, because I feel like if I'm responsible for people or for a project or projects, I worry that if I'm not reachable, something may go wrong. It may not be something destructive, but I just wrestle with that guilt, where it's like, what if they need me for something? What if I need to approve something and I'm not available? Something can go wrong. So how would you advise someone like me who feels the need to be accessible like all the time, can't go offline, will be afraid that a WhatsApp message will come in and I will miss it and something could go wrong, whatever that thing is, no matter how minute it is? How do I deal with, that kind of environment and that kind of system?
Yeah, okay. So there are a number of things that I can point out from that conversation, but something that behavioral therapists will say is that there's always a gap between a situation and your response to it. And it's your response to that situation that matters, not necessarily how you feel about that situation. Right. So even if you feel guilty, right, if you act, the opposite way, when you feel guilty, you will still get the response that you want. What do I mean by that? When you have that need to be over available, start with creating space between how you respond to that feeling of being available. Say, take a deep breath, first of all. Like, don't immediately pick up your phone. So you have to be very mindful about these responses. Okay. Take a deep breath, and it's like, okay, I'm learning to put down my phone. I'm learning to step away and take care of myself. Now, the thoughts will show up, right? That is like, if I'm not available, then this will happen. We call that catastrophizing, looking at the worst case scenario. Right? So when you start catastrophizing, look at the costs of catastrophizing and the payoffs from catastrophizing. The cost is, like, what are the disadvantages of catastrophizing? It would make you feel anxious throughout the night. You're in distress. You can't relax and be present with your family. All of that. What are the payoffs? It can help you be better prepared. It can help you show up in your work better. The things that can happen, the holes, and then it can help you plug in those holes. So now, how can you get those benefits without doing that action. So what are the things that you can do during the day to make sure that you will not be needed in the evening? Right. Yeah. So again, it's a very mindful thing. And then when you are sure that when you look at that situation, it's like, I did this during the day, I did this during the day, did this during the day. The odds of things going wrong are next to zero. So can I wait till tomorrow? Yes. So you're mindfully making the decision to wait, as opposed to you putting your phone as an avoidance technique. You have walked through those thoughts, and then you've made them the conscious decision to wait because you've walked through those things. So first, regulate, self-soothe, take a deep breath, journal, stretch, take a walk, and then costs and payoffs, things like that.
Do not catastrophize.
And then act.
So how soothing.
It feels like you're getting the therapy.
Yeah, like free of charge.
This is not therapy.
So we've not even started.
No,
we've not.
Imagine what you're going to get.
I cannot. It's a free ads for me.
So is there a technological way of getting therapy?
Technological way, how so?
Maybe let's say I'm in US or I'm in Lagos, and you are presently in Abuja, and I need to actually reach out to you because I feel comfortable with you as a therapist. What other way? Because I've been seeing apps and everything, but people don't feel comfortable using apps
those kinds
because
of
they feel like they need the in-person, conversation.
Yeah, I think like one of the, I don't even know if I can call it benefits of the pandemic was the rise of virtual sessions. It was there before the pandemic, but right after, people had to adapt to having virtual sessions. And they were like, oh, I can have my session while making my hair, eating lunch. I will stick to that. So you can have virtual sessions with your therapist and just create an environment that is safe and quiet. And safe is the most important thing there for you. Especially and you have internet connection.
So it still feels like meeting you in person. Okay, because I actually feel like sometimes you just want to look at the person.
Yeah, eye to eye. Yeah, so you're able to monitor like body language
and things like that. So will you be able to capture all that through
virtual sessions?
I think so. Yes. Sometimes video sessions work, but for clients that are uncomfortable with therapy, or they're just easing themselves in, whether due to stigma or trauma or whatever. Sometimes we start with even audio sessions, and then when they feel comfortable, they turn on the video. So it gives you that option, like, what am I comfortable with? What am I ready for? And then you go for that.
That makes a lot of sense.
So I know that Us Therapy, you take bookings online. How would you say the response has been? Are people sort of quick to get online and say, oh, I'm looking for a therapy, person in Lagos, Nigeria? What's that activity like online?
There's that. Social media is a good place to start. How I went about it because of my marketing background, content. So they get a vibe of what I have to say from my social media page, and then they'll either book a consult session where it's just like 15 minutes, free 15 minutes. They'll ask questions around like my values and their values, because that rapport is so key to establish safety for them. And then they jump in. Some clients will just go ahead with booking one session to get a feel, and then when they feel like they're comfortable, they'll now book like multiple sessions. So it just depends on, and sometimes referral from previous clients and your friends and family. Like, I think that takes up a significant percentage of my clients. It's just like, oh, where do you hear? Like, oh, my friend, oh, this or that. Nice. I can just like connect the dots, and it's like, okay, cool. Because again, safety. If it works for this person, and this person is your friend, and this person knows my vibe, they just believe that it would work.
Will you go in the direction of getting an app anytime soon? Maybe?
I'm not close to the idea, but like, I just want to make sure that it works. Yes, I think that's just like the summary of it. Yeah.
Okay,
so beginning of the show, we actually talked about, people knowing that they actually need help. But in practical terms, how do you think they can start, like, balancing their mental health and, with work and all that? What steps do they need to take, and, practical exercises?
Practical steps? I think have a plan that includes you. beyond having your productivity plan and your to-do list, have breaks in your day that would have you check in with yourself. Like, develop the practice of checking in with yourself. You know, we check in on our boss. How do our bosses feel about us? We check in on our colleagues. Like, you know, check in with yourself too. How do I feel about this job? How do I feel today? Am I hungry? Am I stressed? Am I tired? And then develop routines to respond to those things. Self-care is not just like, you know, coffee, you know, skincare and stuff. Self-care is really identifying your needs and developing a practice to meet those needs. So if you know that you are anxious and like relaxation exercises help, breathing exercises help, journaling helps, that is your self-care thing. Sometimes it can be just like having an after work ritual that at the end of my work day, this is what I would do. I would stretch, I'll grab a drink, I'll take a deep breath, I would breathe, I would go, you know, dark, no technology for the next hour, and then just like be by myself and then tap back in. So just having like routines and rituals that work for you. And then like with my clients, I talk about different types of rest. Beyond sleeping, there is like sensory rest. So if you're in an environment where there's a lot of light, a lot of noise, a lot of, you know, a lot of things that are overwhelming your senses, like step away from that and create an environment that, you know, that is within your control. So it can be something like playing rainfall sounds, like a scented white noise, you know, a scented candle, something that is calming, that will just like reset your senses. There's also like social rest, where if you've been overwhelmed by people, you take a step from that. And if you've not really had like a lot of interpersonal contact, you step back in and you reach out to your community as well. There are different, like look up 7 types of rest and then see the one that applies to you and do that, because it's beyond sleeping. Right. Like sometimes your body needs to recharge in different ways. And I think that's a good start.
So you talked about how even as a business owner, you create content to at least get the word out there about what you do. One thing I have equally noticed is for very many people, and of course it's a social media age, everyone is online. You talked about not only building like your career, you're building your personal brand as well. People are monetizing their personal brands. And when you look at the metrics that collaborators or sponsors are using, you know, with regards to engaging some of these people, it's okay, how many followers do you have? Okay, how many views? Okay, how many likes? What is the engagement on that you know, post? Some of these things contribute to the deteriorating mental health of content creators, you know, on a general note. How can somebody actually not get overwhelmed by some of these things, seeing that these things are important to them and the building of their career and their personal brand?
I think from the get-go, have a set of values that are away from these metrics. Okay. Because the world will always demand that from you. You don't have to like create your own set of metrics that are away from the numbers. So things like, have you been able to create content that is meaningful to you? Check. Have you been able to develop your public speaking skills so that like where you used to be shy, you're no longer shy?
That's personal for you.
Yes, check. Like stuff that you can celebrate that is within your control, outside of all of the things that are outside your control. Right. Because like when you keep focusing on things that are outside your control, you can sneeze on social media and you go viral. And then you spend 10 days creating content and like 300 views. That thing would really mess with you. Yeah. So you have to create like your own set of metrics that are within your control that you can celebrate and all. Recently I asked the client, like, what are the parts of you that need care? What are the parts of you that need collaboration? What are the parts of you that need celebration? So like celebration is like when something goes right, when the engagement goes right, celebrate that. The parts of you that need care, if it doesn't go right, create coping strategies around that. Allow yourself to be disappointed. Allow yourself to actually be overwhelmed. Allow yourself to be tired and create a practice around that. Does that mean affirmations where you would remind yourself of the bad bitch you are, even if people are just like sleeping on you?
Bleep.
You know? Do that, like all of that. And then the parts of you that need collaboration, what do you need to research on? Because the idea is not denial that, okay, you know, I'm not going to do anything in the name of self-care. If there's something that you need to learn, recognize that, accept that, and do that as well. So create like a holistic view of your work and, create plans around that beyond just the engagement.
Lovely.
Okay. So I actually think there's an area that people have not really looked into, but it's actually like, something that we should actually think about big time, because when you're talking about therapy, or what you've been talking about is like self-care and all, what about people, especially tech bros and women in tech, that are in relationships and your relationship partner is not even helping you at all? You have like a lot of deadlines. You need to actually take some time to rest. You understand? Think about yourself or reflect on life and, have this self-care. But your partner is saying,
you don't have time for me.
Or you don't have my time. I need to be in your life 24/7. Do you understand? Because I have a lot of tech bros that complain sorry about girlfriends, but no shade. But I have some tech bros that actually complain that, okay, my girlfriend is not giving me this time, you understand, to actually work or to relax. Because sometimes you need your time, need time. So what do you have to say to the girlfriends and
the boyfriends?
See how he just pointed, he said the girlfriends. Like, who are you talking to?
They will know.
Okay, so with situations like this, I don't recommend just like randomly having that isolated conversation.
Right.
I think you should develop like a practice. We call it sometimes a state of the union, where once a week, maybe 30 minutes every day or 15 minutes daily or once a month, you sort of check in with yourselves and then ask yourself, like, what sort of support do you need? What do you expect going forward? What are the changes that would happen? Things like that. Like, clue them in on a day that, there's zero conflict, where everybody is prepared to sort of air their grievances in a very loving and caring manner. Not just, when conflict is happening and it's like, you never do this, you always do that. It's just like,
that's boost.
It can be your monthly anniversary. If you're the type to celebrate that, you just have like that checklist. Like, okay, here's what is happening at the office this week. I think that they would need more of me this time. So these are some of the things that would happen. I would love to be present with you, but just know that, when I text XYZ emoji, I am thinking about you. Like, create a plan around that includes them, but also communicates your needs during that time. Yeah. So when you develop that practice over time, it's now more of a routine to like advocate for yourself and listen to them, as opposed to when she says, "Oh, can we talk?" It now becomes like,
what have I done again?
Yeah, do you get? And she wouldn't feel like a nag when she's talking, because like her needs are just as valid as yours.
Absolutely.
So,
his needs.
As his needs.
I'm suspecting you, Digga.
I'm trying to help my friend here.
Now, so asking for a friend.
So both parties are coming into the conversation not feeling defensive, and they know that they will be heard, because this situation is designed for both of them to be heard.
So you're gonna ask me something. No. Lastly, from me, you do policy as well, right? I mentioned that in your bio, and I remember there's an old episode of the TechCity Podcast where we talked about this crypto situation and how policies that sometimes the government makes crumbles businesses, right? For some people, it's like they start off something, maybe it's fintech, maybe it's whatever sector, and then they come with one policy and somebody's business or a group of people's businesses are done for as a result of that policy. And in that episode, we talked about how it was important for people to check on their fintech founder friends. Like, this policy came and it meant that, there was going to be a lot of reduction in users. There'll be a lot of reduction in, just the, scaling potential of that industry. And, it was a slightly funny thing, because then people were saying, check on your fintech bros. They're not, it's not only when they have a fundraising that you check on them and say, oh, tech bros that, now they are really have been hard hit by the government. How does policy formulation affect founders, right? And how do you think they can better care? I mean, I know it's a very nuanced conversation, but how can they better care for themselves when they exist in a country like Nigeria, where regulations are flying left, right, and center, and it could affect their businesses?
I think you just mentioned how it affects the founders. It depends on who is in the room when the policy is being made. You can't create a policy for a set of people and exclude them when that is happening, because like they are not there to advocate for themselves. They are not there to talk about the impacts. They are not there to talk about the high point and low point or how it will benefit them. You're just looking at it from one angle and then it would impact them. So when, a policy is being made, like it has to be representative. Like the policymakers, they have the people on the table. It has to be representative of the people that it would affect. If not, it would be a very unfair act for you to not be affected by it and then just like dish it out there. So I don't even think it's asking for too much for those tech people to be in there. If you're even going to stretch it out a bit, check out like sociologists, psychologists, people that have studied these things in large groups of people, like sociologists. Bring them into the room and let them talk about how it would impact them. Then bring the tech people to see like this app that has been made. How can we do this? Like ask questions. Again, it's still about including them as opposed to like excluding them from the conversation. Yeah.
Alrighty.
So I have one question, probably last question for me. That's probably in the minds of everybody right now, the listeners. Anu, how much is therapy? Is therapy affordable?
Boom!
Is therapy affordable?
Is it?
Is therapy affordable?
Because we actually hear it's probably like a white man thing, or people do it abroad, and you keep hearing thousands of dollars and things like that.
A friend of mine started therapy and couldn't continue because according to her, it was too much for her to afford. So we have you to either confirm
or deny.
Exactly.
Is it affordable?
Yes or no? It is and it isn't, depending on how much you earn. I don't know how much you earn. But I do know that therapy is not accessible to everybody. That I will admit. And that is why community mental health is key. That is why we need funding. For therapists, we need funding for NGOs. We need funding for community mental health activities that people can tap into and access therapy, even if it's not coming out of pocket. And also, community mental health is also key because like the therapists will get paid without it being at the cost of the people.
Yeah.
Because when people think about making therapy accessible, the first thing that comes to mind is therapy should have pro bono sessions. But I won't go to the bank to pay my bills and be like, I had 10 pro bono sessions last month, right? All of these things, they have implications. So it's not accessible. But thankfully, there are NGOs like the Initiative for Equal Rights that provide, a clinical psychologist and therapists to come, and then people will come in to have access to it without, paying a dime. I think Stand to End Rape Initiative also does that. There's mentally aware. There are people that are doing that, but again, I think TS just one therapist is there. So we need more of that. We need funding. We need more community mental health, therapists and activities and stuff like that. But it's not accessible to everybody.
And it's not really a
ballpark figure.
I cannot speak for everybody. I can tell you how much I charge because it's on my website. You're right. It's like I charge 25K per session and 90K for 4 sessions. Is that accessible to everybody? No, it's not. I know that, but that is why I always talk about funding and accessibility in other ways.
There you heard it. This has been really insightful. Thank you so much, Anu Jide-Ojo, for coming on the podcast today to share why it is important for every tech bro, every tech sis, and everyone who is, everyone out there, really, young professional, to access therapy. It's important for your mental health. And of course, having a good community that, is concerned about your mental state is equally very, very important. And you can also book sessions online. Ostherapy.org.
Yes.
Check it out.
I mean, let me even say something. Listen to the way she talks calmly.
Listen,
this is the type of therapist you need in your life.
I've gotten actual tips on how to deal.
Do you understand? You don't need somebody chaotic that will be shouting your ear that why you not sleeping.
I cannot.
So that has will talk to you well and you serve it will enter your head. So on to you, Bella.
There you go. That's all we have time for today. Yet again, we hope that you have learned a thing or two or more from this episode of the podcast. Thanks again to Anu Jide-Ojo. You're online and on social media at
Ostherapy.
That's it. Simple as that. So check them out and let us know in the comments below what you have learned from this. And just in case you have anyone who you know needs therapy but is a bit shy about it, forward this link to them and let them see that it's not a taboo. It's not something to be ashamed about, but it's something that is very needed, especially in today's age. I'm Belarus Okoje Duruji yet again.
Take out, yeah.
See you guys next time on the TechCity Podcast.